Thank you, Rachel, and thank you everybody for coming today to hear about the National Competency Framework and national rollout. I'm not going to put on Andy today because he is at a conference. So, but what I will do is I'll make him answer some questions at the end, just to make him earn his pay. So let me just share my screen. Let me know when that is sharing.
Yep.
Fantastic, brilliant. Excellent. So, National Competency Framework. I'm glad to hear so many people have heard of it and people are planning on using it. But what we'll do is we'll give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour on what it is, what it's meant to cover, how we've got here, who's been involved, what does it look like, and how it can be used, as well as the content, as well as then covering what the plans are for national rollout. And obviously, we will have time for questions at the end. Okie dokie. Moving forward then. So why have we done this? Is a really good question we get asked quite a lot is, well, because we have a vision to try and make health and care be recognised as one of the best places to work as a data professional. So when people are doing data-based, they want to get into a database career, they think of us in the same sentence they think of Google and Microsoft. So rather than losing people to going working for gambling firms or, algorithms, people on Facebook, for example, advertising, they think, well, I want to come and work in health and care. And it becomes a well-known place for people who want to work in data, make a difference, and solve interesting problems to come. So our mission to help achieve that vision is around professionalising our workforce and working to create a more vibrant data culture within the wider workforce across health and care to help upskill people for data literacy in those areas and get a more educated audience. How we're going to do that is, again, we can't do anything nationally. We have to work collaboratively. That's the whole point. We are far more powerful as a collective group of data analysts, data scientists, data engineers to be able to lobby for our position, for our seat at the table, for recognition of the expertise that we bring. And so to work collaboratively to standardize what we do, who we are, how we develop is the only way we're going to really be able to make significant progress in this area. Just for a little bit of sort of background, obviously, we are not alone in data. We are part of this broader rollout of the DDAT framework, the Digital Data and Technologies Framework. The difference being is that the data family, who I work for Ming Tang, who's the head profession for data, we are the vanguard, which is always nice. It's nice to be the vanguard. It's a little scary, but we are the first area to go off and work and develop our competency frameworks and to be looking to roll them out. But why did we start with a competency framework? It's a really good question because obviously there are other places you could start, but we always thought was, well, actually, if we are starting with a competency framework, we're doing that because we want to put it at the very center of the work we do and then come off from that. So we've got somewhere that is consistent, that allows consistent standards and language across the system, that allows us to start streamlining things and linking things so we can build from a really solid foundation. So we then can use that to baseline where people have got exemplar areas of work and best practice, because we can turn around and say we know their staff is fully competent, they're using this, they're embedding this, they're developing people, but it can also then be used for that. Let's look to the future. Everyone keeps hearing it in the news and the media all the time that the technology and AI and machine learning, that's all going to be the future of healthcare. But how do we get there? We don't get there without a skilled, experienced workforce. How do we, people in these positions of having a team of experienced staff as is doing the day-to-day and being busy doing the day-to-day, how do we plan for what that workforce skills needs to be in 5 years' time to try and deliver on all these promises that keeps being made to the public, to the system, because there's no point having this fantastic technology there if there are not the people who are skilled to understand it, use it, and let's be honest, interpret it for our maybe not as data savvy audience. But also having a competency framework, having those consistent standards and languages facilitates that partnership working across organisations. We all have problems with recruitment and retention. We know this from our observatory survey pieces. It's regardless of where you are, there's always somebody else somewhere, whether that's you know, another part of the health and care sector paying more money, or in some cases another part of the private sector paying more money. There's always somebody else there who is going to be able to offer people more money than us with public sector. But what we can offer is career opportunities, people to be able to move around, to joint work, to solve and to make a difference. And the competency framework is a building block that will allow people to sort of have consistent understandings of what people can do across organizations where everywhere else is using the same framework, but also allows us to identify, and this is through the work that Andy is doing, we can map existing training offers to the framework. So when people are identifying things for training and development, you know, opportunities, targets in the framework, we can then have things that go right, and this is where you would access it. So it gives people who are offering training or apprenticeship standards or ISDNs, they've got something consistent to be able to map to go, this is what this module will do, this is what this thing or suggestion for how you would do something, this is how it would help you achieve that competency. And it gives us a good way then of being able to move people from a baseline up to meeting that in-house developed workforce succession plan that we all know we're going to have to do, because we're never going to have the money to be able to just go out and hire fully qualified data scientists or AI specialists. We're going to have to train and grow our own. So what's the plan? What's the roadmap of the work that we've done so far? So this is the first of the roadmaps. You'll be happy to know, Rachel, there's another one for national rollout later. So this is the journey we've been on, and it's not been a short journey. It's not just been done something. And I'll be honest, I've been in NHS England for a while now, but was out in the system before. This has not been an ivory tower creation. This has been a system collaboration to create this. So it started off with the discovery phase that was done all the way back in COVID period, November 2020 to April 21, where it was literature searching and desktop reviews and interviews out with analytical leaders from around the system, and an online survey of the analytical community, which is basically like, tell us about the frameworks that you're using, and then a proper desktop review, which was about quality checking them against each other. Now, obviously, that did find that there was no uniformly recognised competency framework for healthcare analysts in the UK. And there weren't international examples that could have been pressed into service that could have been used, but that there was will and enthusiasm for people for a national framework. So that sort of gave us the mandate. Other than like the policy mandates that were coming through, we had a mandate from the people that this would actually affect to say, yes, this is something worth exploring. So that sort of led us into the alpha phase, which took place in 21 to 22, which is where we basically...
How you doing, buddy?
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, guys, do you want to put yourself
What
on mute?
have you got?
Hi, everyone. Could you just check you're on mute, please?
Fantastic.
Thanks.
It's okay. I want to know what the snack is now, but even so, maybe you can put that in the chat. The whole point of this, the testing phase, was getting together working groups of people who've got expertise in the area of data science, data analysis, and data engineering, and bringing them together to come up with the straw man version of the framework. And this wasn't like just pulled from the air. We used the government analytical function framework as a starter. We used Sophia, and there were a few other areas as well, DDAT example, that were all brought in as sort of the base material from which to construct. But it was very much around working with these cross-party, there was over 20 organisations involved that were including local authorities, as well as different versions of healthcare, small organisations, big organisations. Wales was even involved. Not that that should be a shock. They like being involved. But and also the charity sector were involved in sort of refining this and then putting it out for testing and then bringing the comments back in and putting it back out again. And then we moved into, obviously that was then published in March of 2022. And then we moved into beta, which was very much that refining. So taking what we'd created, taking on board the feedback and recommendations, doing some more work on data science and data engineering in particular, and then taking that out into the system. So testing the framework, we tested it in over 44 sites around the country. Over 170 people were onboarded. 123 of those actually participated in at least one of the weekly survey. We had weekly tasks, things, and people were asked to then respond and tell us how they got on. And then we also did exit interviews with 26 members of staff. And all of that enabled us to go, yes, we have got system support for the framework as is. It is a point of necessity for the professionalisation agenda, but it also then gave us the mandate to go, it's not just about technical skills, it's about the whole person. So that meant that we then spent time in January to March of this year expanding the framework to include ancillary skills around leadership and management, to include core behaviours, and also working in project skills. So these are people who are data people who work in projects, not project management. So there's overlap, but we're not trying to train people to be project managers. They have their own competency framework. And then obviously we've then moved on in this last push, and it's been early adopters. So taking all the work that we've done on that completed version 1 of the framework, and taking that out and 8 sites, onboarding them and getting them to then develop their implementation plans, identify what next steps they're going to take, really set their visions, aims and ambitions and missions for this work, which has been fantastic. And you'll hear more and more about them through the launch and the regional events. I won't steal all their thunder, but I'll just have a quick move on. But yes, oh, there we go, little car, I forgot about him. But this is sort of the range. Again, we've had really good national involvement in this from a range of different organizations, etc. And as you can see, that it's been as thoroughly tested as we can possibly manage with us involved, and fantastic involvement from around the system. And a massive thanks also to AFA for a lot of that. Oh, sorry, it's gone dark in here because I've sat still for too long. There we go. For that, but this is sort of the distribution and the range of etc. has taken part. So what does it look like? It covers the data family within DDAT. So at the moment, that means we've developed competencies around 3 of the role families. So data analyst, data scientist, and data engineer. Now, there has been a new role that has been created in DDAT data family since we started the development, which is the data ethicist. I have to say that carefully because I always say it wrong. We haven't as yet included that in the framework, mainly because there's no peer group currently that we could pull into a workshop to actually then help us develop the competencies for that. It's not widespread enough. Once they start really getting embedded in, then that's something that could be built on board. And it's the same with any other new roles that come along in the data family. We would look to include them in the framework. But the idea being that this is a modular framework. So your core competencies are related to the skills family, data analyst. Then these are umbrella terms. So this is around anybody that has some form of analytical skill would probably sit under data analyst. So you'd have your information analysts, your performance analysts, maybe your evaluation people, etc. They would come under data analyst. Data scientist being a much more specialized offshoot, and data engineering also having its own core competencies. But as a result of that, there is overlap in some of the high level headings between them. So all of them, as you would expect, would have some form of technical communication skill, but that's then specified to the particular area. Similarly, you will have data and analysis skills that are in each of them. But again, it's the flavor based on whether you're more on a data analyst role, whether you're more on a data scientist, whether you're more on a data engineer, because all of them use those skills. They just use them necessarily slightly differently. But as I say, it's a modular framework, so people would identify which of their main families they sit in, or if they're in hybrid roles, which one of the families they sit across, would identify their core competencies from that. And then you add to it, non-copyrighted. It's a bit like a Lego house. You've got core modules that you can then add together to create something that's unique and specialised and reflects the role that you have or the role that you're trying to recruit to. So you'd add in specialisms, they cover technical specialist areas. You would then add in additional areas around as relevant, key behaviours, what's required for those types of roles. Do they have any leadership and management responsibilities? Do they have any working in project skills? Some of which are obviously just really good underlying, time management style skills, etc. But some of them would be leaning more into, having to scope and develop and plan work, etc. And then the domain would always be, that's not something we define as part of the competency framework, but we've got it there because we recognize there's always going to be sector specific, organization specific knowledge that you're always going to want to specify, which is whether it might be knowledge of particular data sets, knowledge of particular software. We can't mandate that, we can't sort of really categorize that because it's going to change so much between organization. So that's very much then to be defined by your organization. The framework's defined to 5 levels. Associate practitioner being level 1. So this is very much where your apprentices are coming in at this level. Level 2, so people who've been in post, got a little bit more working knowledge, they're practitioners. Then again, the more senior people, the people that you would then be able to go to for advice and support. The advanced practitioner, people that are then going off and leading teams. And then that level 5, so the people then at that more strategic level, your 8Ds, your 9s, for example, who are out there providing that strategic leadership, not only just for your organization, but probably across the local system. And as I said, it's building from the basics. You specify the domain and sector and discipline or activity, then you would add in the core competency definitions that apply to the skill level or role that you've got, and then add in those additional skills as relevant, whether that's specialist technical skills that we wouldn't include in core competencies, such as software coding skills, because that's going to vary depending on what you're using in your organization, etc., as well as then the ancillary. So an example would be, say someone's working in population health, they're a level 2, so that they've completed their apprenticeship, for example, and they're now sort of working at that practitioner level, and maybe they've specialized in like GIS mapping, etc. So that might then add that together and for a few other bits, and you've got like that population health GIS analyst style role. On the other hand, people might work in urgent care, but at that same core practitioner level, the difference being is then they might have an SPC specialist skill, add that together, they're working as an urgent care BI analyst. Another example, mental health, at a more advanced level, practitioner level, but then they're also evaluation. That could be a mental health evaluation lead analyst. Similarly, someone working in public health domain might have the same level of like level 4 advanced practitioner skills, but they're involved far more heavily in leadership and management because they're actually running a public health informatics team. So they might be a head of public health and analytics. So it's very much around what we can always do with this. You can go out and create all these different sub roles, but what you can do is always map back to those consistent standards of the practitioner levels across the core competencies. So this is just the high level categories. These are not the definitions of them. So the idea being that under each of these areas, there are then multiple statements that people can either go, yes, I can deliver and achieve on that, or no, that's something that could be a target for me, or also it's not necessarily applicable. But the idea being under data analyst, there are 6 core competencies. Same with data science, data engineering. I've got 7. Data analyst is defined from level 1 all the way up to level 5, as is data engineering. Data scientist does not have a level 1, mainly because people generally don't come in at an apprentice level for data science. They come in at data analysis and then move into data science. Or if people are coming in at data science, they're coming in directly at a graduate level. So there is no level 1 at this stage. Now, that doesn't mean that over time, there might not be a apprenticeship style entry level role for data science developed. And once that is, we then can populate a level 1. But that's sort of what they look like. Ancillary, as I said, each of these have got 5 competencies defined within them, Behaviours and working in projects are again defined to that level 1 to level 5. The leadership and management actually starts at level 3, and that's to sort of link in with that band 7 management level. Now, that's not to say people might not be demonstrating some of these skills at junior level, and that's perfectly fine. They can be, or they can be putting them in as targets to develop the competencies for. So when they move up and progress into those types of roles, they've already got some of that under their belt. Absolutely fine. It's saying it's used for both this is what I've achieved, but this is what I'm targeting. And lastly, at the moment, and I say this at the moment, we have 20 specialisms that are defined. And I use the word definition very loosely here, as in because these are areas that are liable to change quite a lot, what we've got is that we've got examples of that level of skill at a beginner, intermediate and advanced level. But the idea being that this is the area that's going to have the most churn and change. So because this is where all the new technical skills are really going to come in here first. And it might be that over time, some of this stuff becomes so routine and so widely applied that it would move into core competencies. But at the moment, what we've done is we've tried to make the core competencies as much about the underlying skill, not necessarily about the mechanism by which that skill is applied. So we've not been software specific. You know, we've talked about good visualization and interpretation as part of core competencies, but visualization specific software would be under here. So Tableau, Power BI skills, for example, would be under here rather than under the core competency, because we can't predict what will be the software that we're going to be using in 5 years' time or what might be happening there. So it's more about how you would use it in there. And here's more about your technical skill that you might want to include because you are interested in having R specialist, Python specialist, Tableau specialist, Power BI, etc. All in here, but under a skill grouping. Okay. So how can the framework be used? The two main focuses we've got at the moment is for using it for development and using it for recruitment. So development, again, is really quite straightforward in that we've currently got a Excel-based tool, but Andy has done the online tool, which is fantastic. So the online tool is basically part of the digital learning system that HEE had created. So the competency framework is online. You go on, you register as part of that general platform of work. You can assign your manager to it. You go through and sort of ascertain where you are on your skill levels by saying, yes, these are things that I can comprehensively do, and these other things are things that I'm targeting for development. And that's then something you can go in, have that conversation with your manager, etc., and come out with a more focused personal development plan for yourselves. I don't know, however many people, I've always had it, we sit down for personal development conversations with people and the focus is more on, oh, I just need to get that technical skill, rather than actually let's plan where you want to go in your career and let's identify what the steps and competencies you would need to do in order to get to that type of role. This enables you to have a far more structured conversation with far more long-term, you know, rather than I just need to do this course that will get me to the end of the year because I've got this particular piece of work. It's more forward-looking. And it also then allows you as a team leader to look across the skills of your team members and to then, you know, assess where you've got gaps, where you've got areas you might want to plug. How does it, you know, match up to that vision of what your future workforce should look like? How do you plot a lovely route? And we are working on a development framework that goes alongside the competency framework. So as people would select things as a target, it would make suggestions of where they can then obtain the relevant training, or make suggestions of, if it's not really a training course specific learning area, what's the types of activities they could do to gain the relevant experience, whether that's shadowing, mentoring, etc. Etc. But also from a recruitment point of view, we want this to be used as a consistent standard, so it enables people to go in and go, right, what are the types of skills I'm looking for in these roles? You know, how can I then use that to create a more interesting and dynamic job advert, because that's the front door. You know, we're obviously working on the agenda for change stuff in the background around the job description. At the moment, we're in this catch-22 situation of what we want to put in and what agenda for change wants to put in is a little bit challenging. But on the Excel-based tool, we have mapped all of the framework competencies to the agenda for change 16 characteristics, which allows you to at least show where those skills would map to, as well as based on what you're doing, a rough points allocation of therefore what it is likely, what you've put in for what banding it would come out at, etc. But the idea being is through this work, through the library of resources, we'll then be able to give you examples of job descriptions that have gone through the process of approval. So you'd be able to take them. Similarly, standardized suggestion interview questions that you could then take as a template and adapt and use for your own purposes. So plans for national rollouts. Oh, it didn't feel like yesterday we started this work and now we're planning to roll it out. It's a little scary. I won't pretend otherwise. So the official launch of the competency framework is in October. We have a national event planned for the 2nd of October in Stoke. I'm sure Andy would be delighted to put the link in the chats for people. There are still tickets left for that. The point of national rollout is sort of three-pronged. Firstly, familiarize. So that's why we're coming out and talking to you guys, as well as a whole other load of events, basically. But the idea being is familiarize, raise awareness of the fact that the framework exists and how people can use it and the resources that are available, etc. So that will be the role profile pieces, the online assessment tool, the library of resources, which will include like resources from our early adopter sites, their action plans, case studies, etc., as well as launch events and conferences. So as well as the session on the 2nd, we are also coming out regionally. So we're going to be running events from sort of early to mid-November. We're just confirming the dates currently with our regional leads to make sure it's not clashing with anything that's already planned regionally. And then the idea being there'll be spaces for about 60 people to come and hear directly from early adopters in their region about what it's been like for them. To have a discussion about the challenges within the region around recruitment, retention, development, professionalisation, and also then hear from us, from the national team, about how they can onboard. The intention is, and we're working with Capita on this, is, and this is the part of the plan part, is that we are offering training on the framework. So the idea being is we will come out to every single ICS in the country. We will ask organisations to nominate 2 champions from their organisations to come out and be trained. And they will be trained not only on the framework itself and the details of it, but also around learning from the experience of implementation elsewhere, what's worked, etc., what hasn't worked, and also then, you know, and some mechanisms of how they can then take that back. But that training will then run from November through to March. Obviously, we'd like to just come out once to an ICS in theory, so we can then get everybody locally who are the champions to form their own little champions network, so they know each other and they can have those conversations locally. But there will also be, as part of that implement, a national NCF champions network that Andy and I, and hopefully some of our regional colleagues, will be mentoring. So the idea is not that we train people and they go away and do things on their own, but actually they go away, have discussions locally, and then come back. And then what we can help do is facilitate conversations between people that are having similar problems, similar challenges, or, you know, that they can learn from different people, etc. And that will then be an ongoing network that we'll provide support out to. And it'll also be the network that will operate as a feedback loop for the maintenance and development of the framework itself, etc. So the timelines we've got involved, oh, actually, I'll skip because this is just a little bit more detail on that. So the timelines we've got involved, there we go, are, as you can see, national and regional events are in October, November this year. So we will be proactively reaching out to all heads of BI, data leads and organisations, etc. They'll be directly contacted by our regional leads. We're going to be pushing stuff through the ISDNs and networks such as yourselves. as well as through OHID and every other network we possibly have. We are also speaking in a couple of weeks' time to the CIO's touch point. So we're going senior as well to try and make sure that we get that CIO buy-in for this work, because some of the blockers we hear from people is, it's great, we want to do this, but actually we're not getting that senior sponsorship and support we need to free up the time to do some of this. So we're going to tackle it that way as well, etc. The training rolls out, as I said, from November to March. We're going to be doing activity-based reporting throughout this process, as you can imagine. So we've got some metrics we're going to be monitoring and pushing out. We're also going to be using the Analyst X Observatory Survey. So there were some baseline questions that went in this year that we will then be using, and we'll be adding some additional questions in for next year's survey that we'll be doing some assessment on. And then the idea that we know this is going to take at least 12 months to bed in, so we'll do some follow-up focus groups and evaluation in April of 2025, basically, to see how we're getting on, etc. So that's the sort of plans and timescales we've got. There we go. Oh, no, little car. So just as a quick recap, because I know we want to get to questions, the competencies have been designed to be as flexible as possible while enabling that standardization. They have been linked to DDAT framework. We are aligning to FedOP and AFA. Obviously, the detailed work of that mapping will be made available to people, so they'll be able to see, and ultimately not just those guys, but we're working with a colleague from Newcastle University who's also doing some mapping to RSS and other areas. So you would be able to say, how does this competency link to a professional standard, for example? Does it meet at 90%? What's the extra 10% that I'd need to do that would enable me, and evidence-wise, to go for that professional accreditation? Because that's the ultimate aim. We want to help people develop their competencies to therefore develop their careers and progress into the types of roles they really want to do and the organization needs, but ultimately help them have a really clear path of how what they are doing through their work and creating an evidence portfolio can help them then gain professional accreditation in the body of their choice, so that we as a body of people have that professional clout behind us saying, no, we are accredited. And it's that idea of the core competencies are very much designed to represent that. Standards people can benchmark themselves against, teams can benchmark what the skills are across, you can use it to identify what your future skill requirements are and to plot that mappable course between A and B, and what do you need to do in order to get to that future within the next 5 years. And as I said, national rollout of the framework begins in October this year. So next steps for anyone who's interested. So I've put 2 QR codes up here, one of which is for the register for the 2nd of October. As I said, there's still some tickets left. So you can go along, that's in Stoke. But also you can register your interest for the regional launch events that will be coming out very, very shortly. We're just confirming those dates and then getting some venues booked, etc. You can check out all the existing content on the NCF, either through the Data and Analytics Partnership Gateway that Andy looks after and maintains. That's got a really good drop down that will give you a good overview of every single stage and links through to the different reports. Or obviously, all the detail work, every minute has been written and reviewed and shared through Analyst X. So if you really want to get into the detail, all the working drafts are even on there. The Analyst X non-national competency framework section, which sits under the communities and learning area, you can go in and find stuff in there. But obviously, if you want to stay up to date, then please just do follow us on LinkedIn. If you just type in National Competency Framework, that's where we tend to push out articles and last minute details on the events, etc. So that's my last bit, Rachel. So any questions?
Thank you, Sarah. That was a really thorough and interesting overview of the National Competency Framework and why you're doing it and what happens next. That's great. We have, of course, got questions. Of course, we have.
Always.
And as you promised, you're going to share the hard ones for Andy, and I fully appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I think I appreciate that tactic. Look how happy he is at the moment. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I've got some I've written down myself, and you may have covered them because I wrote them down at different points in your presentation, and I've got some on the screen which I'm just going to read out because sometimes when I share the screen, it's just like, well, where do I go? You know, which one
that's
should
fine
I
with
go
me.
on? So I've got, first of all, I got an observation. It literally says this is just a point having to train or grow our own analysts because we can't afford to employ fully qualified AI specialists, etc. means there's a great opportunity, isn't there? That's a good thing. That's a positive thing. That's great. And then somebody, so these are in no particular order. So I haven't themed them. I haven't done any thinking on this. I'm just reading what I see here. So when we say data, do we mean just quantitative data or qualitative data as well?
We mean all data.
Okay.
All data.
Excellent. And that's obviously the right answer. And is there a website link where I can share this with managers and colleagues?
Yes, there absolutely is. We will make sure that goes in the chat. But if not, literally just type in the Data and Analytics Partnership Gateway, and that will come up first thing on Google, and there's a national competency page on there that is shareable, that has every single stage documented, as well as a link to the Excel-based tool. So you can go in and look at the detail of the framework now, even before it launches.
Okay, that's excellent. And what we'll do also, we'll just with the video, when we put it on the Midlands Analyst Network webpage, we'll stick those links in underneath the video so people have got it all in one place. That's really helpful. And someone is saying, as an analyst, this sounds great. Are you finding that relevant directors are convinced? So how is this going down to non-analysts with people who, all of us analysts, want to be able to influence and want them to have the buy-in as well? Really important.
Well, it's going down pretty well. I mean, it's like with anything, this is part of a much broader revolution than just ourselves.
Absolutely.
So the whole DDAT revolution, the rise in prominence and of data, digital technology, as well as our associated add-ons of like cyber and all these types of things now. No, I mean, it's one of those things. People are always happy at a senior level if you can give them something tangible to follow, because the problem generally is that a lot of people in those senior positions do not have a data or a digital background, and so therefore are often really relying on other people, whereas this is actually really quite self-explanatory in a lot of ways. You can baseline, you can use the detail to set targets, you can use then the development framework to plot how you would get from there to there. So it provides a lot of detail and support for people that's relatively easy to understand.
Okay, thank you.
I think just the other thing to add on to that, Rachel, is as Sarah was saying before, you know, there's a lot of things now that get talked about that senior managers will be hearing about, changes in the way that, you know, AI coming along, and, you know, the stuff we're going to be doing with population health and things like that. And the framework gives you a way to articulate how some of the skills and the needs that you're going to have to do that sort of work are different to maybe some of the traditional ways of working that we've had. So it actually helps to break down what those changes are going to be, to be able to then, you know, when you're speaking with the senior managers, is to actually explain, well, you can't take person A here and slot them straight into there. We've got to develop them. We've got to build the skills in order to be able to deliver those expectations.
Yeah, quite right. So it really isn't just a tweaking at the edges, is it? This is like, it is more of a revolution, really, in terms of, and if we can, and part of this is this rollout, etc., is to demonstrate that need, is to demonstrate to leaders, to people making these decisions, that we are on the case. Basically, we know this is needed. We're demonstrating to you how we can achieve it. No, there's a point. There's a question. Just I'll go to Zoe in a minute. I think she's got a hand up, but somebody's just put on, just relevant to this. Our senior leaders like it though when external management consultants give them things. So this is this sort of giving leaders the confidence in their own workforce. This obviously is not a new thing, guys, but this is to demonstrate to them that we have a plan. We know where the gaps are. We're learning where the gaps are, and we know where we're going with this. And having it in this framework, I think, is just a really useful tool. It's more than useful to just present the case to them as well. So Zoe, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I first of all want to apologise. I couldn't type it anywhere. I've just got a bit of feedback. Is that all right? Because
Yeah, sure.
I couldn't work out the technology. So what I'm just interested in is quite a lot of the work that you're doing at the moment is through NHS Futures. Is that where it's all going to end up in the future? Because being mindful of applications, which we're going through actually currently for a data scientist role, a lot of people are external to the public sector, and so they'd have to log into NHS Futures to understand maybe or to prepare for a lot of what they should do for an application form, because our training will probably be based around what we can access as public sector people, I would also assume, as well as those that you can pay. So, for example, if somebody comes from university and they want to get into public sector and they want to know how we work, I was just wondering how open this will be. And I've talked a lot, and you'll probably say, yeah, it will all be out in the open, and then I should have just left it. Just sorry.
No, it's a really, really good question, and thank you for asking it. So obviously we have had this sort of one step in one camp, one step in the other, 1 foot, 1 foot, and 1 foot, 1 step, whatever. And that's because obviously this has been in development. So it's been developed in Analyst X, which obviously is open to people from universities and academics, because that's a far more open community on Futures. But this is the purpose for us, is now we're moving, although obviously a lot of the community-based activity will still stay there. What we're doing is the tools now moved onto an online platform that's hosted by Health Education England, basically. So it's on the digital learning system there. Andy is the expert on the online tool, but basically, if you can get a log on for there, that enables us to basically have a link straight through from that into like the e-learning HIS systems and stuff like that. Andy, you know more about the tool than I do. How accessible is it?
It's a public facing website, so people will be able to go on, they'll be able to register. You'll get assigned to the, when you do your registration, you get assigned to the competency framework and be able to go through and do your scoring. And there's also I think as Sarah said earlier, the option to then assign a manager, so you can look with your manager. And I think probably longer term, the learning hub will be kind of where all the assessments are done, but it's part of the longer term work that we need to do, is making, as you said, so as much of this as accessible to as many people as we can, because we are keen to build staff that we've already got within health and social care, but also we need to be attracting that new talent in. And the framework's a great way for doing that, is to say, well, actually, once you're in, and this is the development framework that we're using to develop our staff as we go along and to build your skills. It's a real selling point, I think, when you're trying to get people in, and having the ability to be able to go and look and see what it's about, I think is key.
So there will be, I do see these as barriers. There will be a login registration barrier, whatever tool you move to, rather than like, this is our competency framework and it's available.
No, it's already available.
Yeah.
In an Excel form, freely on the internet with no login.
That's what I wanted to hear.
That's already there. That's already there. The difference being is for the online tool, because we want to be able to link that through to development, and ultimately we wanted to they want to link it to ESR as well.
Wow.
That needs to be in something, because that's part of the technology enabled learning platform work.
No, what I was kind of looking for is that we could go, here is our competency framework.
You can, on the gateway already. You can go and look at it.
Yeah.
It's already there.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, so we did have a hand up, but it's disappeared. So I won't. I know who it was, so I'm not going to pick on them and say ask your question. So I have one or two other points on which we'll put on Menti, and I have one or two questions myself if we have time. So somebody is wanting a little bit of clarity. Excuse me, they say, is it that you have to achieve all competencies at a level, or might it be more of a point based, so that you can gather points from a different from across?
It's got to have been
different.
Andrew.
Yeah.
He wants to know about point basis.
Andy, what do you think about that?
You will go in and you will score across many different disciplines. I think what's recognised is that, particularly as you kind of go down from a role at national level further on down, that you will be a mix of a data engineer, a data scientist, a data analyst, and you can score across different areas. So no, you don't have to do all the competencies. You'd start off picking where you think you're most likely to be. They're not strictly the bands that you'd have, but they're a rough indication of, if you're a band 7 analyst, kind of go for the senior practitioner level, start off there, see what you can do, but look across the different areas to see, because that's when we start to get that understanding of the different disciplines that people have. And it will almost give you your kind of analytical DNA profile. You're kind of a 70% analyst and a 20% scientist and a 10% engineer, which is what most people are. But it would then help you to be able, because you can see the whole framework. It's all there for all the different disciplines. If doing data science was something you really enjoyed, you're then able to look to see what are the skills you'd be wanting to work on to develop more into a data science role. Equally, if you're doing data science but you want to get more into the analytics, or you want to get more into the engineering, you can do that sort of thing as well. But yeah, you can go through, you can score across all the different areas that you like, see where strengths are and see where opportunities are for future development.
Okay, thanks, that's really helpful. So it was Richard, wasn't it? Richard, have you got a point or question?
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to ask about, is it just a framework that's really applicable to the NHS? Because sort of in public health, in the last few years, because there's more and more stuff gone on fingertips, we very rarely have to query and stuff. So, and then there's a few years where we lost our access to, because of governance, we weren't able to actually, we lost the access into query data. So that we're probably quite, as a whole, public health probably isn't quite as good at doing that kind of thing anymore, but we rarely have to do it. Is it a wider framework where you could just do it?
Yeah, no, this was obviously when it was designed. It's had public health and social care involved in the development. So the skills are more generic. So yes, it will have something in there under the data transformation area around the ability to query and transform data, but that then doesn't specify whether that's querying record level data or aggregate or this. It doesn't go down to that type of thing. It's more about, do you understand the underlying, and can you do these types of things, and it doesn't specify data sets or health data and specifics or those types of things. It's more on the generally applied skills across.
Yeah, okay, because I mean, that's work as well. It's work with different people to get data and validate it. Does it include things like that as well?
It does, yes.
Yeah, because I think that's a really key skill these days. Actually.
Yes, it does.
If you look at the kind of working in projects and the communication skills, there's a lot of emphasis around that side of working. So yeah, and that was part of the stuff that came through in the beta testing is the need to develop those skills.
Yeah, I know it's good, because I mean, part of it, that's the really key thing as an analyst, isn't it? I've been analyst for a long time, but not just in health as well. But that is fine, working people getting data and validating it. So
trust me, I've come from a public health background. I was a public health analyst for 8 years. There was no way public health skills were not going to be included.
No. Okay, no worries. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks both. Oh, Sarah, I'm also public health analyst background. I was an epidemiologist for about 30,000 years, in fact, before I'm in my current role.
Well, I was in Eastern Region Public Health Observatory, and then I went to Northamptonshire, where I headed up the public health informatics team a very long time ago, when it was PCT days.
Oh, well, we've got lots of future chats right there. Right, we've got a couple of minutes left, but so I won't have time to ask or for you to answer some the questions that I had for you, so that might have to wait for another day. But I was observing and wondering about links with the intelligence function guidance typology and those kind of connections. So that's quite a big question with a not
We're
long to go, but
very closely connected with them. We just
Oh,
met with Rachel
perfect.
McElroy yesterday.
Yes.
Excellent.
Do
Excellent.
you want me
Timing.
to answer this one, Sarah? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we discussed with Rachel yesterday. As I said, because the way the competency framework works of stripping the skills down and the technologies, you know, and making them separate, it enables those conversations to be had. And one of the key things is going to be when we're looking at integrated intelligence functions is looking at that. What do we need to be doing more of in 5 years' time? And then translating that back through to what become the skills. And I think the national team are hoping to make stronger links when the revised, not revised guide, but it's the first anniversary of the integrated intelligence function guidance coming out. I think they'll be pointing out that the competency framework is going to help create a language that enables you to have those discussions about we need more of these sorts of skills. We've got to either grow them or she was using the example of On System where they brought it's Dorset, isn't it, where they brought in a data scientist, but the data scientist will work across a number of different organizations. They're almost employed at the system level, but will work in different organizations as required. So it's a case of whether you need them in your own right, in your own organization, or whether it's a system-wide thing that you have.
Absolutely. So that sounds like a really useful thing to do as well, to share good practice, to share what other people are doing in other areas. So we've just in Midlands, we've just been going through a process of sort of working with our 11 systems plus NHSE to look at their developing intelligence functions and to see what those skills are that they need, where they are in their journey in terms of their own function anyway, which varies, of course. But we're having to try and our process is bringing in the National Competency Framework, thinking where does this fit, as opposed to maybe in a year's time it's quite clear. And instead of having to do the thinking myself, guys, if you could do a bit of that for me, that'd be really helpful. So that it was mentioned and it was integrated. Integrated. Let's just keep using the word integrated because it's just loads of fun. But that would be really helpful. And
we're also linking into the skills development network as well. So I was on a call this morning with them. So we're looking at making sure that the framework then supports the skills development network offers that there are. So that's
brilliant.
key.
So we link in with those as well. So we just need to make sure that we are sort of make sure that the Venn diagram is optimized, you know, as it's squeezed in as much as possible. Okay, that's fantastic. Well, before I know people are just they're running away because they're hot and hungry. They want to go and sit in the garden. I know that's me. I'll pick their daughter up. She can wait. So I'm just going to very quickly just go over what's going on in the next two slides. But in case you do have to go, thank you so much for coming in. That's been really, really useful. I know people have been really interested to see this, and they will be looking at the recording afterwards because lots of people have asked me where it's going to be, etc. So thanks again for coming in, and do come again. And I would just like to say in the next few huddles, if I just share my screen very briefly, I will just have a look at this. So Zoe must love it that she's always on this slide. So we have the next week. I might just leave you to read the rest, but the next week we have. You'll love this one. Andy, you'll love this one. It's just right up your street. The curiosity of analysts. I mean, this is what it's all about, isn't it? So this is with Fraser Batty and Gordon Stovin. Now, the really interesting thing about this is, if there's anybody still left in the room, I normally do a dead on 12 o'clock stop, you see, but I'm in a talky mood. I blame Andy. So the curiosity of analysts. So we're going to be doing that in the next session. And that's really going to be setting the scene for a longer sort of workshop on this as well. It's something we're pretty passionate about here at MDSN and the strategy unit. And the interesting thing is I'm going to be trying to do it as part of the strategy unit away day. I joined the strategy unit away day planning team unbeknownst to them, because I thought if I do that, I'll be able to incorporate my huddle into the away day and not have it, sort of thing. So there you go. It's going to be interesting. It'll either be like a complete success and seamless and professional, or it won't, and you'll just have fun and you'll get a lot out of it anyway. So that's what's happening next time, and you can see there's lots of other things coming up as well. including all about intelligence functions. So we're going to be doing a session on that, so that people can really understand what they're about and how they affect them. And I'll be inviting our chief analysts to lead that session. They don't know about that yet, by the way. So if there's any online today, that might be news to you, but I'm sure you'll look forward to that. And then please do just check out the training. We gave you sort of a gap over the summer for training because you weren't here, and there's lots happening in September and October. And it's just a note to myself that in the future we need to start tagging on where the competency framework actually hits some of these training programs or vice versa, so that to make it easier for people to navigate and work out what they need to achieve certain of the elements on the competency framework. So I will stop sharing. We've still got nearly 60 people in the room. You all get a special prize. Thanks again for coming, everyone, and Sarah and Andy, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.